program is brought to you by realestate.com.au. With more homes for sale than anywhere else, realestate.com.au is Australia's #1 address in property.
Welcome back. There are 2,429 homes scheduled to be auctioned this week. That's up 26% when compared to the same week last year. New South Wales will hold about 1,000 auctions, with roughly 800 in Sydney. Victoria will also hold about 1,000 auctions, with most of them in Melbourne. Queensland will hold about 230 auctions, with more than half of them in Brisbane. South Australia will hold 124 auctions, with virtually all of them in Adelaide. Western Australia, Tasmania and the NT will hold 23 auctions between them, and the ACT will hold 49 auctions. Taking a look at the most viewed properties going to auction this weekend, and in New South Wales, top property is 16A Nyara Road, Mount Ku-ring-gai. This newly built 5-bedroom mansion is called Villa del Sol. Asking price is about $2.9 million. Top property in Victoria is 179 Thomas Street, Brighton East. This Art Deco brick home has 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms and 1 parking spot. It's been renovated, has an asking price of about $1.45 million. The top property in Queensland is 2 Cumbari Street, Bray Park. This 3-bedder needs a lot of work. The agents say it's brimming with potential, needs a lot of elbow grease and is a renovator's delight. The top property in South Australia is 748 Torrens Road, Rosewater. This 5-bedroom cottage has been extensively renovated and is close to the suburb of Port Adelaide. It's got 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, sits on about 550 square metres. And the top property in Tasmania is 13 Jungira Street, Howrah. This 3-bedder is close to the Derwent River, just 15 minutes drive from the Hobart CBD. It needs a bit of work, but has potential. And our feature property this week is in the Sydney suburb of Earlwood. The address is 35 Bayview Avenue. The house looks like a giant flying saucer that crashed on top of a rock. Could be described as the UFO house. It's got 5 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms and parking for 4 cars. The property's halfway up a large hill and has great views of the Sydney CBD. This is the first time the home has been on the market in more than 40 years. The circular layout revolves around a central column, and every room on the ground floor and first floor have large windows looking out at the view. The auction for this one is scheduled for June 25. And for more on property, I caught up with Anne Flaherty from REA Group a little earlier.
Yeah, look, conditions are quite unusual this winter in that we're continuing to see really strong levels of properties hit the market. We're seeing a lot of homes come up for auction, which is quite unusual. We normally see things quieten down significantly until we get back to that sort of spring selling season.
And just broadly, auction clearance rates seem to have been holding up pretty well over the past couple of months.
Yeah, they do. They are slightly down from the same time last year, but they're still sitting well above the levels that we were seeing in 2022. And I think this is part of the reason we're continuing to see high levels of homes hit the market. Selling conditions are quite good. We are seeing prices continue to rise in most markets, and so vendors can feel quite confident.
Yeah, and we've seen some stats from the Bureau of Statistics over the past few months really showing the investor segment of the market is coming back. Well, you guys have got a report out this week looking into investor trends. What's it saying?
Well, overall, we have seen a really strong bounce back in investor activity this year, particularly in certain markets. For example, Western Australia, where if we look at year to date, investors are purchasing about 50% more homes than they were at the same time last year. What we're really seeing is that whereas we often think of, investors looking for either capital growth or high yields, there are a lot of areas that are actually displaying both. We're also seeing a lot of interest in mining towns once again, where we're seeing double-digit yields and also very strong price growth.
And is there any are investors usually they go for it and buy an apartment, but are you seeing both a split between apartments and homes, or is there a specific sort of category that they're really looking for?
It definitely varies by state. In the more affordable states, WA and South Australia, we're seeing more interest from investors in houses, which do typically see high levels of capital growth. In the more expensive markets, particularly Sydney, we would see more units targeted by investors.
And with this bigger influx of investors coming back into the market, is that having an effect on prices as well? Are we starting to see, price growth really across the country continue?
Well, look, I think that this increase in demand from investors is really one of the key drivers contributing to the price rises we're seeing. We know that buyer demand is strong across all buyer types, but the fact that we are seeing more investors compared to 12 months ago is definitely a key factor in supporting the growth we're seeing.
And I guess it goes to the fact that there are almost 2,500 properties for sale this weekend. There's obviously quite a bit of confidence in the seller side of things to list homes at this time of year when it is normally pretty quiet.
That's right, and we do track seller confidence, and we have actually steadily seen it recover. And even, with talk that we might even potentially see another interest rate rise, it's still looking less likely than not. But that hasn't seemed to dampen the confidence of people looking to sell at the moment. And likewise, that buyer confidence is still very strong as well.
And yeah, looking forward for the rest of this year, is REA Group sort of still expecting prices to keep growing at a sort of gradual pace?
Look, we do expect prices to continue to rise, particularly in those hotter markets, say WA and South Australia and Queensland, which have been real outperformers, particularly in those metro areas. We are sort of seeing conditions remain a bit soft in markets such as Melbourne and also a lot of regional areas where we've actually seen some marginal price falls this year. So it's varied, but I think that those markets that are seeing that really strong investor demand are going to be at the top of the list.
Yeah, and just looking at Melbourne specifically, obviously growth there hasn't been as strong as some of the other capital cities, but is part of that because there's just a lot more stock for sale in Melbourne, usually week in, week out, compared to everywhere else.
That's right. And I think, one great thing about Victoria is actually the state is able to supply more housing more rapidly than some of the other states, in particular in comparison to New South Wales, where the development process takes much longer. So the fact that we see more homes for sale actually helps to reduce that pressure that buyers face in terms of competing with other buyers to get stock. So what we're seeing is that where there are more homes for sale, that means that same level of demand doesn't face as much pressure and we don't see prices move as quickly.
Well, Anne Flaherty from REA Group, thanks for coming back on the show. It's good to have you back on the program.
Thanks for having me.